So, dictionary meaning of negligence is failure of duty to take care. So, if you may say, negligence is the breach of duty caused by the omission to do something which a reasonable man, failure of duty. That failure of duty is caused due to omission in doing something which a reasonable man, guided by those considerations which as an ordinary prudent man would have done. A reasonable man guided by the considerations ordinary regulate the conduct of a human affairs which you do, or something which a prudent or reasonable man would not do. Which a prudent man. Prudent man means an ordinary man, a person having some amount of intelligence. He is called a prudent man. Failure of duty to do something or not to do something, or not to do something as a prudent man, that will be treated as negligence. So, for negligence, there must be three conditions, three constituents, involve three constituents of negligence. First, there is a legal duty to exercise the due care on the part of the party complained of. That means the defendant had a legal duty to take care in doing an act or in not doing an act against the plaintiff. A legal duty to exercise due care on the part of the defendant toward the plaintiff. Second, the breach of the said duty. Third, there must be damage, consequential damage. If no damage is caused, merely because somebody is negligent, then the liability under the tort does arise. So that's why this, according to Charles Worth, negligence in that is means a state of mind in which it is opposed to intention. Intention and negligent in something. Here intention, somebody active intends to do something. But negligence may be treated as carelessness. Careless in conduct, there is no intention. The breach of duty to the of care, which is expected, what type of care, what type of this care a person would have taken, he did not take that care and did a particular act and thereby caused damage. So negligence is used for the purpose of fastening the defendant with liability. When defendant is liable, when the defendant is liable, because of that negligence, that means first the defendant had a duty to take care. He did any act or omitted to do a particular act which would not have done, or he did that act without due care and attention, and that caused any injury to the plaintiff. Then only the plaintiff is entitled to get damages under the law of tort. So that is this. In Indian leading case in the matter is Jacob Matthew versus State of Punjab. But so far as this found, it is the main leading case basing on which this negligence was determined. That is the famous case, that is Donoghue versus Stevenson case. That is Donoghue versus Stevenson case. It is also popularly known as, that is ginger beer case. What in that case? In that Donoghue versus Stevenson case, this defendant, a ginger beer company, failed in its duty to take care, reasonable care, while manufacturing a particular beer. So by consuming that beer, the ginger beer, one of the customer, so here he suffered from certain disease, certain nausea, or certain gastro problem. For that he claimed damages. That is called first negligence that is the Downing versus Stevenson case. And second is, that is Australia Knitting Mill versus Grant. That is also known as a undergarment case. That is Australian knitting mill that is manufactured a particular undergarment. The plaintiff used that garment and suffered some skin disease. There it was held that there was negligence, the defendant was negligent. But the Indian authority in the matter is Jacob Matthew versus State of Punjab. What it says, in this case, the degree of negligence has to be higher than that of negligence enough to fashion liability for damages on the scene. In Jacob Matthew's case, see, negligent, to make a person liable for the negligence, that will be a higher degree of negligence. But so far as civil liability is concerned, there may be lesser negligence. The essential ingredient of mens rea cannot be excluded from consideration when the charge in a criminal court consists of criminal negligence. In case of criminal negligence, there should be some amount of intention. So, but in civil negligence, this intention is not there. So, this is called, that is negligence, failure of duty to take care. That is, there are two leading cases. So for the first, in an action for negligence, what the plaintiff is required to prove? First, that the defendant owed a duty to take care to the plaintiff. When a suit is filed, when an action is brought under the law of tort, or to get compensation or damages from the defendant by the plaintiff must prove the three factors. First, that the defendant owed duty to take care to the plaintiff. Second, the defendant made a breach of that duty. Third, that the plaintiff suffered damage as a consequence of thereof. If any of the ingredient is missing, then the plaintiff will not be successful to get damages. Duty of care to the plaintiff. What it means? It means a legal duty. Means a legal duty rather than a moral or religious duty. Plaintiff has to establish that defendant owed him a specific legal duty. There is no general rule of law defining such duty. There is no specific rule of law. What is duty? Legal duty. In this famous case, the landmark decision on negligence is Downing versus Stevenson. In this case, Lord Atkins said, it is remarkable how difficult it is to find in English authorities statement of general application defining the relation between the parties that give rise to the duty. The courts are concerned with the actual relation which comes before them. When a case under the law of tort comes, the court is concerned whether actual relationship with the plaintiff and the defendant, and whether defendant had a duty. The result is that the courts have been engaged upon an elaborate classification of duties. So what is duty? That is to be considered. Whether actually the defendant had a legal duty to take care, that is to be considered, that is to be decided, considering the facts and circumstances of each case separately. So here, Downing versus Stevenson and the same as gained acceptance. Till the Downing versus Stevenson, in that case, what is the ginger beer? Because the defendant was preparing as a food article. When somebody is preparing, selling food article, or a company is manufacturing food article, that company must be very, very careful that the food article is free, is not containing any foreign particles or any that is injurious thing. So if that is there, so that proves the negligence of the manufacturer. So what is negligence? That whether a reasonable care to avoid acts of commission which can be reasonably foresee, that the whether the defendant had the reasonable foresee to be likely to injure your neighbor. What is negligence? A person, whether a person can reasonably foresee whether his act will cause injury to his neighbor. Neighbor means what? A person closely and directly affected by my act. Neighbor doesn't mean by immediate neighbor. Neighbor means here a person who is closely and directly affected by my act. So, in such case, the law requires that I must take reasonable care in doing that act so that any other third person is not harmed. So, Downing versus Stevenson case, what is that case? You should know. When you think of that is negligence. Downing versus A purchased a bottle of ginger beer from a retailer for the appellant, a lady friend. Some of the contents were poured in a tumbler and she consumed the same. When the remaining contents of the bottle were poured into her tumbler, that means her friend, that is the decomposed body of a snail floated out with her ginger beer. The appellant alleged that she seriously suffered in her health in consequence of drunk the part of the contaminated contents. The bottle was of dark opaque glass and closed with a metal cap so that the contents could not be ascertained by inspection. So the plaintiff brought an action against the manufacturer for the damage. Here, one of the defense pleaded by the defendant was that he did not owe any duty of care towards the plaintiff because the manufacturer had sold that ginger beer to a particular shopkeeper and that shopkeeper had sold. So this ginger beer company had no duty to the plaintiff, who was ultimately the customer. The House of Lords held that the manufacturer owed her a duty to take care that the bottle did not contain any noxious matter and that he would be liable on the breach of the duty according, that is, this House of Lords said that who will consume with a reasonable, that is, you must have reasonable foresee that it will be consumed by somebody. That is a proof, that is a beverage that is to be consumed, consumed by somebody. So a manufacturer, so in such case, he had a duty, the manufacturer had a duty not only to the customer, that is ultimately to the customer who consumed it. Then manufacture a product which he sells in such a form as to show that the intends them to reach the ultimate consumer. When a manufacturer, a ginger beer is manufacturing, the manufacturing company has knowledge that the manufactured ginger beer will ultimately go to the consumer. Manufacture product which he sells in such a form as to show that he intends them to reach the ultimate consumer in the form in which they left him, with no reasonable possibility of intermediate examination. There was no possibility of examining the content of the ginger bottle because it is a black opaque bottle or it is a closed bottle. So here, in this case, this defendant, ginger beer company, was made liable. Another defense pleaded by the defendant was that the plaintiff was a stranger. Again, it was contended by the defendant that the plaintiff was a stranger because there is no privity of contract to the contract and her action was therefore not maintainable. In this case, the House of Lords held that privity of contract theory is not applicable here. It is a tort. So A understood some contractual obligation towards B. So, but here, it is not a contract. So, under the law of tort, he is liable. So, duty depends on reasonable foreseeability of injury. What is that duty? Reasonable foresee. Somebody who has a reasonable foresee that his act will cause any harm to another. So, reasonable foresee. So, that is first thing. Second is that That is, in this context, you see, that is where the defendant owes a duty to the plaintiff or not, whether the defendant had a duty to the plaintiff or not, reasonable foreseeability of the injury to the plaintiff, that is to be considered. The plaintiff, that is to the plaintiff. If at the time of the act or omission, the defendant could reasonably foresee injury to the plaintiff, then he owes a duty. At the time of doing a particular act or not doing a particular act, if the defendant had reasonable foresee, that is, that will cause injury to the plaintiff, so in such case, it is to be construed that the defendant had a duty to take care. Duty to take care to the plaintiff. So here, duty to take care in the duty to avoiding doing or omitting to do anything, the doing or omitting to which may have as reasonable and probable consequence of injury to other. That is, probably cause injury to other or damage to the other. So in Dr. M. Mai Gowda versus State of Karnataka, M. Mai Gowda versus that is M. Gowda versus State of Karnataka, the complainant and 5 children of his family took an elephant joyride on 7/10/1992 at about 8 p.m. in Mysore Dasara exhibition ground after having purchased ticket for the same. After taking a number of rounds, while the complainant and the other persons were in the process of getting down from the elephant became panicked in that rush hour and ran forward. The complainant was thrown on the ground, as a result of which he received serious injuries, resulting in total loss of eyesight of both the eyes. He was a medical practitioner. He claimed damage of 9,90,000. It was found that it was a female elephant having participated in such rides and festivals for 13 years. It had acted in film shooting, various religious functions. That female elephant had taken part in various religious functions and honoring the VIPs. It was held that there was no negligence on the part of the opposite party because he had no reasonable foresee. He would not have foreseen that the elephant will cause some injury. The reason of the accident was unusual and unfortunate behavior of the elephant. So therefore, the complainant was dismissed. That the suit was for damages was dismissed. In another case, Bukur versus Wenberg, the defendant boarded a train. Which had just started moving, but kept the door of the carriage open. Boarded the train, but the door of the carriage was open. The door opened outside and created a danger to those standing on the platform. The plaintiff, a porter, who was standing on the edge of the platform, was hit by the door and injured. It was held that the defendant was liable because a person boarding a moving train owed a duty of care to a person standing near it on the platform. So here, in such case, it was held that the defendant boarded train, so because he had a duty to take care, you must have closed the door. In Dhanaveni versus State of Tamil Nadu, yes, Dhanaveni versus State of Tamil Nadu, the deceased slipped into a pit filled with rainwater in the night. He caught hold of a nearby electric pole to avoid a fall. Due to leakage of electricity in the pole, he was electrocuted. The respondent who maintained the electric pole was considered negligent and was held liable for the death of the deceased. Similar was also the decision of another Madras High Court in T.G. Thayamanor versus Tamil Nadu. An overhead electric wire running across a road snapped and fell on a cyclist going on. These things are happening every day. Suppose electric wire snapped and fell on somebody. So that will be negligent. Because there will be, when electric wire is passing, that is that the electricity department must foresee that it may proper repair should be taken, proper inspection should be made. Likewise, in chairman MP-led city board, Rampur versus Akelal, a sea buffalo of the plaintiff respondent, while grazing, reached nearby transformer of the defendant and died on the spot because of coming in contact with a broken live electric wire lying nearby the transformer, stating that it was the statutory duty of the appellant defendant to stretch the wire, particularly when high voltage current was floating. So there was negligence. MP State Electricity versus Ramlal Vishwakarma, a child aged 10 years, died to electrocution by coming in contact with live stay wire embedded with an electric pole while current was flowing, stating that the defendant were a duty bound to examine and check it. This is, that is so far as electric, when where electric pole, there should be extra care by the electric company that there should not be any leakage of electricity. Similarly, in another case, so negligence to start a bus before passengers get into it. Suppose some passenger was entering a bus, immediately the driver drove the bus. The passenger fell and died or sustained injury. For that is negligence. So, what is negligence? That is, this act of the defendant has a duty to take care, and because of that act, some damage is caused. Then only, because that negligence will amount to a tort. Sushma Mitra versus Madhya Pradesh State Road Transport. The plaintiff was traveling in a bus belonging to the Madhya Pradesh State Road Transport Corporation, resting her elbow on the window sill. The bus was moving on the highway outside the town area. A truck coming from the opposite direction hit her in her elbow, as a result of which she received severe injuries on her elbow. The bus and the truck, however, did not come in contact with each other. Taking into account the fact that the habit of resting elbow on the window of the bus is so common, it was held that even if such conduct was negligent and foolish, it must enter into contemplation of a reasonable driver. The driver of both the buses and the truck owed a duty of care for safety of the plaintiff as while driving or passing a vehicle. So they are made liable. There are a number of cases in the matter that is not, but when the injury, no liability when injury not foreseeable. When injury were not foreseeable, there will be no liability under the tort. Suppose the plaintiff, a lady visitor to a restaurant, was injured by the falling of a ceiling fan on her. The reason for the falling of the fan was a latent defect in the metal of the suspension rod of the fan. The defect could not have been discovered by reasonable man. So there was no negligence. Similarly, in Krishnappa Naidu versus the Union of India, the plaintiff taxi passing through a level crossing was hit by the defendant railway train. It was found that the taxi driver entered into the level crossing in spite of the warning given by the gateman. So in such case, railway was not negligent. Ryan versus Young's case, the defendant servant, while driving a lorry, suddenly died, which resulted in an accident and consequently injury to the plaintiff. The driver appeared to be quite healthy, and the defendant could not foresee that driver will, while driving the vehicle, will die. It was held that the accident was due to act of God. In Glasgow Corporation versus Muir, the manager of the defendant corporation tea rooms permitted a picnic party of 30 to 40% who had been caught in a rain to have their food in the tea room. Two members of the picnic party were carrying a big containing 6 to 9 gallons of tea to the tea room through a passage where some children were buying sweets and ice cream. Suddenly, one of the person lost the grip of the handle of the tea container and 6 children, including plaintiff, were injured. So it was held that there was no negligence. So what is negligence? First thing, breach of duty. Second, there must be a duty, breach of duty. Second is breach of duty. Breach of duty means non-observance due care which is required. Breach of duty, non-observance of due care which is required in a particular situation. What is the standard of care required? The standard is that of a reasonable man which would have taken care. Man of ordinary prudent man in how he would have acted. If in that manner somebody had not acted, so that will be treated as breach of duty. If the defendant has acted like a reasonable prudent man, there is no negligence. If the defendant had acted as an ordinary prudent man in a particular circumstance, then there will be no negligence. That is, negligence in the omission, what is? Do something which a reasonable man, guided upon those conditions which ordinarily regulate the conduct of the human affairs, would do, or doing something which a prudent and reasonable man would not do. That is standard of care required, standard of ordinary care. The law requires taking of 2 points into consideration, that is, the importance of the object of the attempt, the magnitude of the risk, and the amount of consideration for which service, etc. So here, the importance of the object to be attended. The law does not require greatest possible care, but the care required that of a reasonable man under certain circumstances. The law permits taking chance of some measure or risk so that in public interest, various kinds of activities should be done. As has been pointed out, in all the trains in this country, we are restricted to a speed of 5 miles an hour. There would be fewer accidents, but our national life would be intolerably slowed down. So you may say that the train will not go beyond 5 miles per hour. So the purpose to be served, if sufficiently important, justifies the assumption of the abnormal risk. So a balance has therefore to be drawn between the importance and usefulness of an act and the risk created. So what is standard of care required? As an ordinary prudent man, what type of care a person would have is expecting to have taken? If in that manner that care had been taken, so there will be no negligence. So this is the third is there must be damage. It is also necessary that the defendant's breach of duty must cause damage to the plaintiff. The plaintiff has also shown that the damage was caused not through immediate direct consequence of his act. There must not be remoteness of damage. So here, the plaintiff has also to show that the damage was caused not too remote to the consequently defendant negligence. The question of remoteness has been discussed that is, we'll discuss what is damages and what is remoteness of damages. In a suit in which the damages are claimed, the onus it is held is on the plaintiff. When damage is claimed, the onus is on the plaintiff that the damage suffered by the direct and immediate cause of the act of the defendant. There is no remoteness of damage. In such a case, any fact which enables the court to determine the amount of damage which ought to be awarded is held to be relevant. So then, you may get a question, what is the res ipsa loquitur? Res ipsa loquitur. That is proof of negligence. How far? Suppose the plaintiff will prove the negligence in a law court. If the thing speaks of itself, in such case, the plaintiff is not required to prove the negligence. Then the onus is on the defendant to show that he is not liable for the law and he is not negligent. As a general rule, it is a general rule. What is res ipsa loquitur? A general rule is that when a plaintiff has filed a suit for damages, he must prove the negligent act of the defendant. He must prove. The onus is on the plaintiff to prove that the defendant was negligent. The defendant has a fellow to do that. Defendant had a owed a duty to him and he failed to perform his duty and thereby he sustained damage. When a suit is brought, suit is filed, instituted for tort. So this is the general rule. General rule is that the plaintiff to prove that the defendant was negligent. So the initial burden of making out at least a prima facie case on negligence as against the defendant lies heavily on the plaintiff. But once this onus is discharged, initial burden is discharged, it will be for the defendant to prove that the incident was the result of inevitable accident. Once this initial burden is discharged, then the defendant will prove that it is not negligent but the inevitable accident or contributor negligence. Not the defendant, the plaintiff had contributed in negligence on the part of the plaintiff. If the plaintiff is not able to prove negligence on the part of the defendant cannot be made liable. But the party seeking to recover compensation for damage, that is the plaintiff, and the onus to prove that the defendant is negligent. And the defendant is like if initial burden is proved that the defendant had duty to take care, defendant breached that duty and did that act negligently and he suffered damage. If these three things are established, then the defendant usually may take defense of inevitable accident or contributor negligence to save him from liability. So in such case, so direct evidence of the negligence, however, is not always necessary, and the same may be inferred from the circumstances of the case. Sometimes direct evidence of negligence is not available. In such case, circumstances will be taken into consideration to prove the negligence. So here, that is, plaintiff failed to establish a prima facie, either by direct or circumstantial evidence, that the defendant, when the plaintiff action must fail. If the plaintiff fails to establish that the defendant was negligent, then this plaintiffs of the case will fail. But it is the general rule. But the plaintiff has to discharge the burden of proving negligence on the part of the defendant. There are, however, certain cases. There is one case where the plaintiff need not prove that and in inference of negligence drawn from the facts. In one case, in one circumstance, by applying the rule of res ipsa loquitur, in such case, the plaintiff is not required to prove that the defendant was negligent. If because the things itself, the act itself, the thing itself, that is speaks of negligence. There is a presumption of negligence according to the maxim res ipsa loquitur. Res ipsa loquitur means, which means the thing speaks for itself. Thing speaks for itself. For an example, somebody came in contact with a snapped electric wire and he died. So in such case, the plaintiff is required to prove only that the fact that his relative came in contact with the snapped electric wire and died. But he is not required to, because this thing itself speaks that the defendant electricity company is negligent. Which means the thing speaks for itself. This is the famous case, that is Ryland versus Fletcher case. In this has been decided. When the accident explains only one thing, but the accident explains one thing, that is that the accident could not ordinarily occur unless the defendant negligent. The accident itself shows that the accident would not have occurred other than the negligence act. The law raises a presumption of negligence on the part of the defendant. The presumption of negligence is on the part of, in such a case, it is sufficient for the plaintiff to prove accident and nothing more. So you should understand. What is the rule versus, that is Ryland versus Fletcher case? That is res ipsa loquitur. Res ipsa loquitur. In case of res ipsa loquitur, that is the accident itself shows that the defendant is negligent. Simply prove, the plaintiff will prove the accident, he is not required to prove that the defendant was negligent for such accident. Because it is not necessary that the event causing the accident must have been the control of the defendant. Thus, when the circumstances surrounding the thing which causes the damage are at the material time exclusively under the control of the manager of the defendant, that the circumstances which caused the accident that was exclusively under the control of the defendant or his servant, and the happening is such as does not occur in the ordinary course of things without negligence of the defendant, the maxim applies and the burden of proof is shifted from the plaintiff to the defendant. The defendant will prove that he is not negligent. That instead of the plaintiff proving negligence by proving the, that is, if res ipsa loquitur principle is applicable, when the accident itself, when the act, that is the accident or the incident itself proves, itself shows the presumption of this negligence on the part of the defendant. In such case, as per the res ipsa loquitur principle, the plaintiff will only prove the accident. He is not required to prove that the defendant was negligent, because the circumstances, the incident was to happen under which was either by the defendant or by his servant. So in such case, the plaintiff only is not required to prove that the defendant was negligent. The defendant is required to disprove it. Defendant will be required to disprove it. The principle has been thus explained in Hawkesbury Laws of England. An exception to the general rule that the burden of, when we say res ipsa loquitur means thing speaks of itself. In a suit for tort, in a suit for tort, in any civil case, the plaintiff is required to prove his case. Similarly, in a suit for tort, claiming compensation in a tort, the plaintiff must prove that the act which caused damage and the defendant had duty to care, that defendant was negligent. All the things, failure of duty to take care. But by applying the principle of res ipsa loquitur, once the thing itself speaks that the negligence, so the negligence of the defendant, then the plaintiff is not required to prove the negligence of the defendant. Then the onus is shifted on the plaintiff, to the defendant, to show that he was not negligent. So this is an exception to the general rule, that is burden of proof of the alleged negligence. The burden, this is an exception to the burden of proof of proving negligence in a suit for tort. That is, the defendant, that the injury complained of was caused by the defendant's negligence, or where the event charged or negligence tells its own story. The event tells its own story. That is, res thing speaks of itself. To these cases, the maxim res ipsa applies. When the doctrine applies, when res ipsa loquitur doctrine is applicable, then the presumption is that there is negligence on the part of the defendant, and the defendant must prove that the onus is shifted on the to the defendant to prove that he was not negligent. When the doctrine applies, a presumption of fault is raised against the defendant, which if he is to succeed in his defense, if the defendant will succeed in it, he must be overcome. He must, rebut the fact that he was not negligent. That is, fault is raised against the defendant, which if is a presumption of fault is raised against the defendant, which if is to succeed in the defense, must be overcome by contrary evidence. The defendant must give evidence that the burden on the defendant being to show how the act complained of could not reasonably happen. Negligent on his part. So it is to be noted that as a rule, mere proof that an accident has occurred, the cause of which is unknown, is not evidence of negligence. But when the res ipsa loquitur principle is applicable, mere proof of the fact of the accident will prove that the defendant is negligent. So in such case, the burden is shifted, the onus is on the defendant to disprove that he was not negligent. So it is to such case that the maximum res ipsa loquitur may be applied. So this is res ipsa loquitur. The accident itself proves the defendant's negligence. Once that is proved, the plaintiff's onus is that is shifted. It is shifted. The onus is on the defendant to prove that he was not negligent. So, in Chief Executive Officer Sesco versus Prahlada Sahu, in the Odisha case, a case of arrest by electrocution. The deceased person came in contact with live conductor where hanging at a lower height and succumbed due to electrocution. There was nothing to show that supply of electricity was totally cut off. It was also revealed that electricity was supplied to one of the consumers. In view of the character of the incident and circumstances attending, it was held that it could reasonably be believed that in the absence of negligence, incident would not have occurred. The doctrine of res ipsa loquitur was held applicable in the case holding the legal representative of the deceased entitled to compensation. The Odisha High Court said that material on record showed that the incident took place due to rashness and negligence of the authority. This is applicable in almost all these electricity cases, the electrocution cases. Collapse of built structure. Similarly, in Municipal Corporation of Delhi versus Subhagwanti, due to the collapse of a clock tower situated opposite the tower hall in the main bazaar of Chandin Chowk, a member of person died. That is, this res ipsa loquitur principle is applicable. So the burden is on the defendant to show that he was not negligent. There are number of cases in this matter. That is res ipsa loquitur. You should understand what is res ipsa loquitur. Ryland versus special case, that is strict liability. So here res ipsa loquitur means the thing itself speaks, the accident itself proves the negligence of the defendant. In such case, the plaintiff's burden of proving that the alleged incident that he sustained damage due to negligent act of the defendant is thereby discharged. The maxim res ipsa applies when the only inference from the fact is that accident could not have occurred but for the defendant's negligence. Could not have occurred but for the defendant's negligence. In such case, this res ipsa loquitur principle will not be applicable. In the next class, we will discuss the situation in which the res ipsa loquitur principle will not be applicable. Thank you.